I've opened up my heart. I'm at the start. I save the world.
Hello.
I save the
Thank
world.
you for joining us. I want to give a shout out to those of you who are now watching this as a prepared video. We share all of my talks on 3 different video platforms: YouTube, BitChute, and Rumble. So please subscribe to whatever platform you are watching this on, and hit that like button too. That helps us reach even more people. And of course, we want to reach as many people as possible with the message of love and healing and acceptance. Help us spread the word. Hit the like button. A lot of A Course in Miracles students, as they do the course, might say, "Oh, this is my favorite workbook lesson." And if you'll notice that they probably have several, maybe a lot of them, as they go through the year. Oh, this is one of my. They might say this is one of my favorite lessons, but in truth, you can only have one favorite lesson. And if I really had to identify the one favorite lesson that I had, I would say we had it just a couple of days ago. And it is the lesson that I turn to when I am in need. It is the lesson that I remember when I am feeling a little bit overwhelmed, maybe, or a little bit lacking. And it is lesson number 38, which is, there is nothing my holiness cannot do. And that, of course, was the lesson that Reverend Rudy read the first 3 paragraphs of just a few minutes ago. So there is nothing my holiness cannot do. We actually are all powerful, and we have connection to all the power of the universe. And I talk about that, whenever we do a meditation. Usually I talk about how we have all the power of the universe at our command, at our disposal. We have all the power of the universe just waiting there for us to give it a command so that it can be used. Power is really the potentiality. So we have the total potentiality of the universe. And I remember as I was studying A Course in Miracles and learning the thought system and making it more and more a part of my thinking. It took me quite a few years to really warm up to that idea, that all-powerful idea. I could conceive myself as having a lot of power, but God always had more power than me. I never conceived of, it was difficult to conceive of myself as having the same power that God, my creator, had. But A Course in Miracles really is leading us to that realization. God doesn't have any more power than we do. All the power that God, our creator, has, we have access to. And it tells us that the only difference between God, our creator, and ourselves is that we did not create ourselves. But other than that, we have all the same power. We have access to all the same power that our creator does and has. And we have access to it now, on earth as it is in heaven. I've given whole talks about that. So it's not like we have to wait till we are in heaven. Actually, we are in heaven. But we don't have to wait till we are no longer manifesting a body. We have access to all that power now. And whenever I think of all power, having all power, being powerful, I'm reminded of superheroes. And, comic book superheroes. And I read a lot of comic books when I was a young boy, when I was like 11, 12, 13, 14. I talk about that from time to time. And I think about the superheroes and the fascination that the culture has with them. All the superhero movies that we have now. And I think about Superman and Wonder Woman and all of that. And I think it was a very important thing for me to be involved with that as a young boy because I identified with them and it gave me an experience of being way more powerful than I felt I was as a human being. And I think it was important to have, at least in my imagination, an experience of that kind of power. And actually, of Course of Miracles, we even have greater power than that. Because, I mean, Superman had kryptonite, and kryptonite was around, then his powers all went away. But we don't have kryptonite. Actually, nothing can stop me, nothing can stop us. There is nothing actually that takes our power away. And that's what lesson number 38 tells us. And it's why I love lesson number 38 so much and why I remember it and why I turn to it. Uh, Reverend Rudy read this. It says, it's in paragraph 2, I believe. Your holiness then can remove all pain, can end all sorrow, and can solve all problems. It can do so in connection with yourself and with anyone else. I mean, isn't that a great description of a superpower? We can remove all pain, we can end all sorrow, we can solve all problems, and not just our own, but anybody else's too. That's an amazing superpower. And I actually think I have an openness to that started back when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, and I read superhero comic books. So I embrace the superpowers that A Course in Miracles is suggesting that we have. When we connect to our Christ self, we are a superhero. And we are connecting to the totality of all power. As I said in the meditations, I always challenge us to really think about that and to open ourselves up to that to whatever degree that we can. Open ourselves up to the totality of all power that is in the universe, more power than we actually can even conceptualize. And we have that. We have that right at our command. We have all the power that God has, and it's not blasphemous to say that. I know maybe a more traditional religious person would think that's actually a blasphemous statement, but I don't believe it is. Not in A Course in Miracles terms. We need to embrace the totality of all power and take it in. And as I said, I believe I started doing that when I was a young boy. I wanted to bring up an image of that means something to me. So I found an image of Superman and Wonder Woman that I remember from my childhood. There it is. That's what the comic book characters looked like when I was a young boy. I could have chosen the movie versions of the characters, but I remember them looking like that in the comic books. Uh, I read Superman comic books. I didn't really read Wonder Woman comic books, so she was part of the Justice League of America, so I was familiar with her because I read the Justice League. I thought Wonder Woman was really for girls, which was fine, but I was a boy, so I wasn't reading Wonder Woman. Of course, later I realized that boys did read Wonder Woman for the art, they would tell me. So, yeah, obviously it's a beautiful art with a lot of flesh and a very attractive form of a woman. So, apparently, some young adolescent boys really did like to read Wonder Woman and look at the art. I wasn't there yet with that. But I read Superman and I read Green Lantern and The Flash and the Justice League of America. I was more of a DC comic book person. And I'd read them alone in it late at night after I'd turned the lights off with just maybe, I think actually I used to read them frequently with a flashlight. And they were very imaginative and really opened my mind up. I think there was always something within me. I think there's something within all of us that really knows that we are all powerful. And what we're being told and what we're being exposed to as a young person usually is not that. we're usually exposed to a whole lot of powerlessness. And so we love superheroes and characters who have this tremendous amount of power. And I think the reason why we love that is because we know we actually have more power ourselves. We know we actually have the totality of all power ourselves. And things that remind us of that, we gravitate towards. It's a way to reintroduce that thought into our minds because we have forgotten it. So, as I said, Superman had kryptonite. And of course, kryptonite made Superman weak. We don't really have kryptonite, but we have things that affect us and give us the appearance of weakness. So maybe we could call those kryptonite. I think I have at different times in different lectures. And what they are, of course, are the emotions of fear and of guilt and of anger. So fear, guilt, and anger at least block the awareness of our all powerful nature from ourselves. And maybe the reason why I was guided to talk about this is because I'm just really aware that there's quite a few people right now in the world that are very angry. Actually, they're very fearful. They're scared. They're scared of what's going on the political scene, and they're angry about it. And the real remedy for fear, the remedy for anger, is to really sink yourself and connect with the power that you are. Powerful beings aren't fearful. Powerful beings aren't angry. My favorite comic book character was Green Lantern, and Green Lantern was chosen to be the Green Lantern because he was thought to be, or he was detected to be, a man born without fear. He was fearless even before he became Green Lantern. In my comic book incarnations, he was a test pilot. So he was a test pilot and he had no fear. And that's why he was chosen to be Green Lantern. So when we want to counteract fear, we want to counteract anger, we want to counteract guilt. And I said, I think there's a lot of it going on in the world right now. How we counteract it is to really just connect to our true power. And maybe that's why I started thinking about the superheroes. If we're not connecting with our power, then we try to handle fear, guilt, and anger with force. That's that old power versus force thing. But force can be very misguided and it can be very violent, actually. You don't have to fear people who have a lot of power. You have to fear people who think they're weak. Because when they think they're weak, they'll resort to force. And when they resort to force, that's when bad things happen. Powerful people just sit in their power. There's that great book by David Hawkins, Power versus Force, that explores those topics and others as well. So to counteract the fear and thus the anger that's going on in the world right now, in our society right now, I want to stay firm and stand firm in my power. I want to be Superman. And maybe I can embrace being Wonder Woman as well. So you pick. Try a little of both. They were powerful. They didn't have fear, guilt, and anger. And they were able to handle and emerge with whatever challenges and appearances the world showed to them. They were able to heal past them. The problem isn't that fear, guilt, and anger show up in our lives. Fear, guilt, and anger are going to show up in everybody's life. The problem is that we welcome them. We embrace them. We point to our favorite chair and say, why don't you have a seat? That's a comfortable chair. And then after they sit in our comfortable chair, we say, can I get you a cold drink? we become the good host for them. That's the problem. So don't tell fear, guilt, and anger to sit in your most comfortable chair, and don't tell them that you'll go get them a cold drink. You know, I want to digress here for a minute. Those are metaphors. What I've just said about fear, guilt, and anger sitting in your comfortable chair and you getting them a cold drink, that's what's actually a metaphor. Metaphors are obvious, symbolic things. You know, a lot of people relate to a lot of Course in Miracles as a lot of it's a metaphor. They relate to lines like miracle principle number 24, miracles enable man to heal the sick and raise the dead because he made sickness and death himself and can abolish both. And they'll tell you that's a metaphor. I talk about this a lot because I think it's real important. No, that is not a metaphor. Telling the ego to sit in your comfortable chair and telling the ego that you'll go get it a cold drink, that's a metaphor. That's obviously a symbolic reference. Nobody thinks that's literally true. So statements that have the possibility of being literally true, they're not metaphors. They're just statements of fact. And it's actually, I believe, a real disservice to the discipline to relate to statements like that, statements of fact, as metaphors. You can disagree with them. You can say, I don't agree with that statement. You can say, I'm not ready to accept that statement. There's a lot of things you can say about statements that are challenging like that. But calling them a metaphor is basically saying that the Course doesn't mean what it says. And the Course does mean what it says. You know, there's a very popular Course in Miracles teacher who is known for saying Jesus is deceptive in his use of language. Really? If I hear a teacher say Jesus is deceptive in his use of language, and this course comes from Jesus, I think that's the last I'm going to listen to from that teacher. Jesus is not deceptive in his use of language. He's not speaking in code, and 50% of A Course in Miracles is not a metaphor. They're challenging thoughts, they're challenging statements of fact, believe them or not, disagree with them or not, but don't do the Course a disservice by calling things that are simple statements of fact a metaphor. So when fear, guilt, and anger come to your house, and they come when the ego is there, uh, it's a disservice to yourself and to the world to be a good host to them. Don't be a good host to them. Don't point to your comfortable chair. Don't get them a cold beer to drink. And they'll just walk through. The problem isn't that they came into your house. The problem is that you try to be a good host for them. Just let them continue to walk through. They will wander off. They are not actually kryptonite. The kryptonite, if anything, is the fact that we want to host them. And we want to be nice to them. And we want to embrace them and coddle them and repeat them and talk to other people about them. And we just need to let it go. We can observe it, but don't host it. And that's what I want to do right now with the fear and the anger that's going on in the world. I'm not going to host it. I notice it. I want to counteract it powerfully. I want to stay in my power and give a demonstration of my power to those thoughts. I certainly don't want to make those thoughts comfortable and go get those thoughts a cold drink. Those thoughts need to wander off. The quotation from the Course that I'm basing a lot of this on is this one. There is a stranger in him who wandered aimlessly into the home of truth, and who will wander off. He came without a purpose, but he will not remain before the shining light the Holy Spirit offered you, and you accept it. For there the stranger is made homeless, and you are welcome. Okay, so you got to be powerful. And when you're powerful, there's no home for the stranger to be comfortable in, and the stranger will wander off. So, not a problem that they wandered in. Don't host them, and they will wander off. Don't be concerned about the ego. Don't deny that you're having ego thoughts or that you see ego thoughts reflected out there in the world. Let them be there. Just don't be a good host of them. Laugh at them, another place the Course says, and let them go. The world is giving us inspired messages all the time. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I do believe, as I've said just a few minutes ago, that the world is giving us, especially young people, an inspired message with the superheroes. It's not a real clean message. It's got all kinds of ego stuff muddying it up, but it still is inspiring people to think of themselves as way more than they appear to be manifesting. And I've talked about this. There's a current healing movement going on in the world right now, and it seems like people are really rediscovering the healing power of sunlight, of being out in the sun. I keep reading about it all the time, here and there. I think it's great. What's not great is that they'll get mechanistic about it, and then they'll say, "Well, the sun is healing because of the vitamin D that is created by the body, so you got to make sure you have a lot of skin contact." And I think all that is good. It's not that I think any of that is bad. But I think the sun is healing because it's this wonderful symbol of us being in the light. It's a spiritual message that we're getting, that we're accepting. We step into the light. We spend as much time in the light as we can. And that does heal us because it brings to mind the spiritual light, the eternal light. And so there's things here that are being communicated to us all the time. I talked about Wonder Woman and Superman, and I talked about how Wonder Woman is usually pretty provocatively dressed, and people like to look at Wonder Woman, men and boys frequently, and some women too like to look at Wonder Woman. And so some people think of Wonder Woman as really kind of a sexist male fantasy. But I do want to remind people that in 1972, when Gloria Steinem was launching Ms. Magazine, January 1972, she chose this image to be on the cover of the very first issue of Ms. Magazine. She chose Wonder Woman. And Wonder Woman showing a fair amount of skin, dressed provocatively like Wonder Woman was. And I've heard Gloria Steinem talk about Wonder Woman and why she did think it was an appropriate image to put on the first cover of Ms. Magazine. Again, January 1972. What's that, 53 years ago, something like that? And she said that, Wonder Woman represented a powerful woman, and she wanted women to remember their power. And she said that Wonder Woman was known for her compassion, and Wonder Woman was known for her love for people and her humanity, really. So we can be Wonder Woman. We can be Superman. We can use these simple images that the world gives to us to remind us sometimes of deeper truths. And I think the world right now needs a lot of Supermen and needs a lot of Wonder Women so that we can stay in our power and so that we can give a display and a demonstration of our power and our calmness. It's not scary to be powerful. It's scary to be weak. And it's the weak that perpetrate the violence and the problems that our society have. It's not those that are truly grounded in their power. So maybe we can remember that. And maybe this can be a day, a year, a lifetime, to really be Superman and to be Wonder Women. Okay, that's my talk for today. Thank you very much.
Woke up my eyes to see. Woke up my head to beat. Woke up my heart to be free. Woke up our world, you and me. I've opened up my heart, I'm at the start. I save the world, I save the world, I save the world, I save